Book 101 review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She is my feature author of the month of January, award-winning author, no other than Miss Juliet Rose. Welcome, Miss Juliet on Book 101 Review, and thank you for being my feature author of the month.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Sure. I am Juliet Rose. I am a multi genre author. I currently have 14 titles that are published of my own. I also am in multiple anthologies and collections. I have won 67 awards for my books. And yeah, I'm just always writing and always pushing forward.
Yes, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Thank you, Miss Juliet, for sharing your books to the world as well. Winning an award often confirms an author's unique voice. How would you describe the core of your authorial voice? And it something you consciously crafted or that emerged organic, organically?
Interesting. I think that it's kind of a little bit of both because I think that originally, I knew I wanted to be a writer. And so then I really worked at that. But what I found worked for me as an author was to take my own passions in life, which a lot of it is social activism, caring about mental illness and things like that, and weaving them into fiction stories. So it is a little bit of both to kind of find that magic spot.
A magic spot. I like that, Miss Gillette. Many authors have a book that made them want to write. What was the seminal book or author for you, and how does its influence subtly show up in your own work?
Yeah, I love to read as a child. I was always reading. I read above grade level and, I was always digging in. But there was one book that was really pivotal. And I read it. I lost my mother at a young age. I lost my mother when I was 11. And I discovered S.E. Hinton and The Outsiders at that time. And there was just something about the way she wrote kind of human trauma and struggle that I really connected to at that point. And so even now when I'm writing my stories, I tend to find that I gravitate towards that, like wanting to weave in, the struggles of any human, anybody going through things, everyday life. And then all the way to more dramatic things like losing someone that you love or going through an addiction or things like that.
How was your writing process fundamentally changed from before you won a major award or after? Is there
Mhm.
more freedom, more pressure, or something else entirely?
It's funny because I think that I just slowed down and I became a little more like aware of my writing because when I was initially writing, I think when you're that musician and you have your first album, you're just kind of really pushing and you're trying really hard to kind of make this amazing album. It's not different for writers. I think we're trying to, get out there and we're pushing so hard. And once I started winning awards, I knew that I had kind of what it took. And so I allowed myself to slow down and really like simmer and think about what I was writing, and even giving myself breaks where I'm like, I don't need to write right now. I'm good. I can write when it's ready to be told.
Yes. The daily grind and creative mechanics. Walk us through a typical ideal writing day. Do you have strict ritual?
I I yes and no. Now I have a day job. I'm a librarian, so a lot of it will have to do with what I'm doing, if I'm working that day or if I'm not working that day, or what responsibilities I have. When I did have really strict rituals, when I could do that, I would get up in the morning and I would write and, 2 hours focus on that and then go on with my day. But then life changed. And so now it's really when I can write versus like that kind of strict ritual. But I try to write a certain amount a week. And if I sit down to write, I try to write a chapter, like begin and end a chapter when I do that so that I've really kind of completed something before I go on with other things.
Are you a meticulous outliner who knows the ending first, or intuitive discovery writer who follows the characters?
The second one.
The
Yeah,
second
the
one.
characters tell me what to do. I've never. I remember being in school and they were like, we've got to make an outline, and I really struggled with that. Even though I loved writing, even then, I just the outline actually felt very forced to me.
Yes.
And now, if I try to write an outline, the problem I run into is that then the story changes gears and it changes paths, and so I kind of waste my time outlining something that may not happen. So I just listen to the characters and I listen to the story and go that way.
Miss Juliet, we often hear, write what you know. But award winning work often involves a deep research into unknown. How do you balance immersive research with the need to actually sit down and write the story?
I get down rabbit holes. I love to research. I was first a journalist. That's what I went to school for, and I spent my younger years writing nonfiction and journalism. And so that really comes naturally to me when I'm doing research for fiction because I enjoy it, and I actually have to stop myself sometimes because I like it so much that I'll kind of just keep going, and so I have to be like, okay, I got what I needed. I can stop researching and then go forward. So it is something that I genuinely really enjoy. And sometimes when I'm researching, what I love is that I find out something that I didn't know that actually then changes the course of the story.
What is your relationship with the first draft? Do you speed through into silence your inner critic, or do you edit meticulously as you go, perfecting each sentence before moving on?
I'm a strict believer that you just got to get that first draft down on paper. So I don't overthink it. Like I really, that's kind of like soul writing. Like you're writing from your heart and you're really just trying to get the story down. I don't really think about imperfections at that time. I don't worry about editing. I don't even worry about if the facts are wrong because when I go back, then I'll check all of that. But when I'm writing that first draft, the goal is get it on paper.
Yes. So let's talk about the emotional and psychological journey. Every writer hits a wall. Can you share specific difficult moment or doubt or blockage you face in your award-winning book and the practical step you took to move past it?
I don't tend to really hit walls because I think that I allow myself to just write down what needs to be written down. And if I get to a point in a story where maybe I need to do a little more research or I'm not quite there yet, it's okay. I'll just set it aside and I'll just let for a few days. I'll let it kind of, just work itself out. I always say I cook. I let it cook, I let it simmer, um, because then I find that it just naturally kind of picks back up again. I don't really ever, I've never had writer's block. I mean, I didn't write for 15 years, but it was because I was raising my children and I just didn't have the energy or time at the end of work and then my children to write. But when I had time and I decided to write again, like I was committed to it, I've never really hit a block. If anything, I have to stop myself from having too many ideas. So I'll be like, nope, that needs to wait. I'm going to work on this right now. And this can sit aside. And, so I really don't run into the point where I get stuck.
Yeah. So how do you navigate the critical inner voice that every creative person has? Do you have a personal mantra or a piece of advice you return to when the voice gets loud?
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if I have a mantra, but I think everybody has that where you're like, I can't cut this, I think, honestly, one of the things I do when I feel maybe discouraged or maybe that I'm not doing what I need to do is I look back at uh, positive feedback. So maybe somebody sent me a message or I have a review that reminds me that that particular story spoke to them. And that it may not speak to everybody, and that's okay, but that it's going to speak to someone. So, I don't really like let it get me down. Everybody has doubt, and I think we all hit that point where we're like, "Am I fooling myself?" But I think that when you look back and you can see that someone says, "Hey, that really meant something to me. That spoke to me." That's really all I need to like push myself forward.
Miss Juliet, characters in celebrated fiction feel profoundly real. What is your process for rebuilding character from an idea into someone who feels like they could walk off the page?
Yeah. I think characters it's odd, and I think, I'm a kind of a highly character driven writer. So that comes first for me. Like the character always is the most important thing and then I build the story around that. But like a lot of times, I think it part of it is listening, because I think those characters in some way already exist. And so what we need to do is stop and listen and not force them. So you might have a character that you think is going to be this way, a certain, direction that they're going to take, or a certain personality you're going to have. But when you stop and listen, they tell you that's not who they are, and that they're actually going to go a different direction. And for me, if I do that, if I stop and I listen to the character, it becomes real, because I'm not trying to force it into like an idea that I wanted. And it's changed whole stories. I've had an idea of a story, and this character was going to be a certain way and this was going to happen. And because I stopped and listened to that character and developed out what it was telling me about itself, the story changed and it became a better story.
A better story indeed. And Miss Juliet, is there a piece of writing advice that's commonly given that you actively disagree with, or have I found it personally harmful to your process?
All of it. No, I'm not a rule person. And I always say, I actually have a podcast as well. And I always talk to people. And that's one thing I say is, I'm just not a rule follower. I think that there's so many rules of writing that actually prevent people from writing, or prevent people from writing their best story, because, you're supposed to do it this way. You can't use this type
Yes.
of language. Don't start it this way. Don't do it. There's too many rules that really, if someone tried to listen to all of them, well, when they contradict each other, like there's a lot of rules that say this, and then they say this, and that wouldn't work. But I think for a lot of people, they get overwhelmed by the rules. Like, oh, there's so many rules, and I'm never going to be able to do this. So I toss all of the rules out the window. To me, I just write and I let it come out the way that it does. And then if I need to go back and obviously clean things up, then I'll do that. But I never allow the rules to affect how I write.
Yes, definitely. And let's talk about the craft revision and finish line.
Mm.
Prose style is a major market or literary acclaim. How do you approach the sentence level work of editing? Are you reading draft aloud, or hunting for a rhythm, or focusing on precision?
It's a kind of a mixture of things. I actually do freelance editing as well. I'm a certified editor. But it kind of like with writing, I don't get too bogged down in editing rules, because there are rules that would actually take away the voice. And so I'm really careful about making sure that when I'm going through that, I'm looking like precision is a big one for me, that it's clean, but that I'm not erasing my voice. That I'm still, even if it's technically wrong in the editing scope, but it's right in the voice scope, I stick with the voice. The voice always comes first, the editing second. So that process for me is very much looking at flow, pacing, accuracy, but also that I'm keeping my voice the whole way through.
Interesting, Miss Juliet. The editing process with a professional editor can be intense. How do you maintain your creative vision while being open to transformative feedback that makes the work stronger?
Yeah, being an editor, I kind of have the benefit of seeing both sides of it. So when I'm dealing with having my work edited, I can understand where somebody's coming from, but I also understand that I don't have to necessarily agree. And I think that's important, even as an editor, is that when you're working with a writer, your goal really is to find that magical balance in the middle, like where the writer feels they've retained control and retained their voice, but also are able to get that knowledge to make their work better. So when I'm dealing with somebody editing my work, it's the same thing. I listen and I think to myself, okay, would this make the story better? Are they correct? Do I agree? And sometimes it's okay to say, no, I don't agree here. I'm going to go ahead and keep what I think is right. And then sometimes you have to say, well, yeah, that actually makes my voice stronger. I'm going to go ahead and follow that, or I'm going to try it. And sometimes what I find is I do it both ways. And then I have a third party look at it and say, which way do you prefer? I use beta readers for that a lot of times, and say, okay, well, I have these two versions. Which version do you like as a reader? And that's usually where I'll lean towards.
Yes. And Miss Juliet, how do you know when a manuscript is truly finished? Is it a feeling, a deadline, or a point where you're making changes you can fully defend?
It's one, a feeling. I think that you hit that point where you just kind of, you just know it feels complete.
Mm,
But it also is something. that you can defend, right? Like, so you feel it, but then you're also like, you ask yourself the question, like, I'm feeling it. Will the reader feel it? And then also, if I'm sending it off to somebody else, can I answer those questions? Does the manuscript answer those questions? Because really, I shouldn't have to answer them. The manuscript should. So somebody should not get something that they feel like they should have to question me on. Because if I did my job right, they're going to get that answer in reading it.
Yes, definitely. And the impact of awards and the writer's life. Beyond the obvious career boost, these winning a major award changed how you see yourself as a writer privately. Did it silence insecurities or create new ones?
It definitely silenced them because I actually, when I started entering for awards, I was doing it actually more for myself. I wasn't doing it to prove something to somebody else. I was really doing it to prove it to me because I'm my biggest critic. I'm going to doubt those things. So, like, for me, it was like the two of me, like the me that did that and then the me that, needed proof. And so I really started entering those to say to myself, yes, I should be moving forward with this. So once I started winning awards, and I've won a lot, I was able to say, okay, I obviously have something here. It didn't make me cocky because you know that you can always fail later. So I just
Hmm.
made sure that I understood that, yes, these were the things like this, these are the elements that I did right. This is what's really successful. So I look at a mixture of awards and sales and feedback together. And that's really how I move forward. So if I have a book that gets not only awards, great feedback, and good sales, then I know that I did something right. If I have a book that gets a lot of awards, but really doesn't get the feedback or the sales, then I have to ask myself why. So I use it as one barometer with other things to really determine how to move forward.
With the recognitions comes a public platform. How do you balance the private, solitary work of writing with the public expectations, interviews, and sometimes activism that follows an award?
Yeah. When I first started, it was hard because I'm an introvert naturally. I'm happy to be behind a screen and never have to talk to anyone. But over time, I really developed scripts and comfort levels of ways of doing things. I even took on hosting a podcast for the Go Indie Now network because I knew it would kind of force me out of my comfort zone and make me more comfortable with the public. And so by doing that, I became a much better speaker. I became a much better listener. Now, when I do events, I'm completely comfortable talking to strangers. Where the first time I did a book signing, I just sat there and didn't really talk. So, like,
Mhm.
it is kind of forcing yourself out of your comfort zone, and sometimes you just have to find out how to do that. And for me, I had to do it by making myself stand up in front of a room, basically.
Miss Juliet, what is a non-writing habit, hobby, or routine that you considered essential fuel for your creative work and your ability to sustain a writing life?
Yeah, I roller skate. I'm a roller skater. I love it. It's honestly the time I feel like I'm flying. And so when I roller skate and I try to go at least once a week and I get out there, it just clears my mind and it brings me to me. So when I go back to my regular life and I sit down to write, there's so much of that I freed my brain to allow me to then move into that.
Looking at the literary landscape today, what is one trend, theme, or style you find particularly exciting or vital for you?
Ooh, that's a good one. I love the fact that indie writing has really skyrocketed. And it comes with positive and negatives. The negatives are that you have people that are rushing too fast, or rushing to get their book out there, or they're rushing to be published. But on the flip side, it's really broken down kind of the set expectations of what a book should be, and allows people to really explore different themes and explore different realities. And that has really opened up a world of outside of mainstream. So people can really find books that they relate to, that they enjoy, or maybe before they couldn't because mainstream still looks at money first and what's going to sell. And so they want to go for the masses. Well, I love the niche publishing where people are publishing something that maybe the mainstream wouldn't touch, but it really reaches out to certain segments of the population.
Yes, indeed. So, Miss Juliet, as an award winning author, what are your short term and long term goals?
Yeah, writing. Short term, it's interesting. I've been pushing really hard. I think I told you, like, I didn't write for so many years because I was raising my children, and then I came back to it once my children were adults, and I really pushed hard. And in 5 years, I published 14 of my own books, and then 22 total. So a couple anthologies of multiple writers, and I helped other writers get published as well. Well, in December, I decided I was just going to stop and just take a month off. And I've decided I'm going to do the same thing for January, just take that month off and allow myself to just let things come naturally and not force it. And that's been really important because for so long I was pushing so hard, and that's all I thought about. I thought about writing, I thought about editing, publishing, probably, the hours that I was awake, that's all I thought about. Where now I'm realizing there's a lot more beauty to it if you just allow it to come naturally. So short term, I'm taking that break. Long term, my goal is to really kind of, I guess, specialize and foster creativity, not only in myself, but in other writers.
Good luck to your goals, Miss Juliet, and looking forward for more success.
Thank
And
you.
what will be your piece of advice for those people out there want to be award-winning author like you?
Write a good story. And by writing a good story, I mean, take the time. Don't look at trends. Don't look at gimmicks. Don't look at, anything people are trying to do. Just really go into your soul and determine what it is that your voice should be saying. Because I think when you do that, that's where you get that recognition.
Yes, very well said, Miss Juliet. Very well said. And thank you for that. So, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 in its third season, Food 101 in its sixth season this summer, Geography 101 Love Letters, Movie 101 Review, Music 101 our fourth season, Science 101 and Sex 101 in its second season, and my baby podcast, Mental Health 101, Law 101, Bible Verses 101, Entrepreneurship 101, and of course, Motivation 101. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Miss Julia, tell us finally what question about the writing process do you wish you were asked more often? And what is your answer to it?
Ooh, that's a good question. So I think probably on the writing process, the question that I wish people would ask more often is really when you feel isolated and you feel discouraged, kind of like you're at that point where, writing is very solitary, and it can be negative in that way because sometimes you are in your head too much. So the question is, how do you deal with that? And I would honestly say, find other writers, find them online, find them in person, talk to people, get out of your head, because it will not only help you become a better writer, but it'll keep you more sane.
Yes, definitely. And thank you so much for sharing your books to the world, Miss George. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for your knowledge and wisdom. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your books?
Yeah, definitely. If you guys want to check me out, we have a website, abovetheraincollective.com. It is all of my books plus a couple other authors. So definitely check it out and then give me some support. I'd love that.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Juliet because if you support her for sure, more and more award-winning piece like this will rise. So, Miss Juliet, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. This is a lot of fun.
Yes, likewise. Lots of fun, and I'm inviting you again to my other podcast, Abstract Essay, and let's talk about one of your latest books. So, more to come, people. See you soon.